Chapter 1. The Warning. Milo Vincent had always been a man of routine. Every morning at 7:15, he walked 3 blocks from his brownstone to Sterling Coffee House, ordered a medium dark roast, and spent 20 minutes reviewing his lecture notes before heading to Westbrook University, where he taught behavioral psychology. His wife, Joanna Spencer Vincent, often teased him about his predictability. "You're like clockwork, Milo," she'd say, kissing his cheek. "It's what I love about you." On that particular Tuesday morning in October, everything changed. The barista, a young woman named Julie Watson who always wore a friendly smile, handed him his usual coffee. But something was different. Her smile was tight, forced. Her hand trembled slightly as she passed the cup across the counter. "Have a good day, Professor," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Milo didn't notice anything unusual until he was a block away. The coffee cup felt warm in his hand, and he glanced down to take a sip. That's when he saw it. Black marker on the white sleeve, hastily written, "Call this now, 555-0147. Below it, in smaller letters, "Urgent." His first thought was that Julie was interested in him romantically. It had happened before. Students, colleagues, even strangers occasionally mistook his natural empathy for attraction. He was 42, fit, with graying temples that Joanna said made him look distinguished. But he'd been happily married for 6 years. Still, the urgency of the message nagged at him. Julie had never shown interest before, and that trembling hand. At a red light, Milo pulled out his phone and dialed. 1 ring. 2 rings. FBI field office. Agent Richmond speaking. Milo's blood ran cold. "I'm sorry, I think I have the wrong number. Is this Milo Vincent?" The voice was calm, measured. "Yes, but..." "No, sir, you have the right number. We've been waiting for your call." There was a pause. Then the agent's voice dropped lower, more urgent. "Professor Vincent, listen carefully. Don't go home. Don't call your wife. Don't tell anyone about this conversation. Pack a bag and come to 1847, Federal Plaza, Suite 900. Immediately." What the hell is this about? Milo's heart hammered against his ribs. "Your life is in danger, Professor. We'll explain everything when you arrive. Do you understand the instructions?" Milo's mind raced through possibilities, analyzing patterns like he did with his research subjects. This was either an elaborate prank or something terrifyingly real. The barista's nervous behavior, the FBI contact, the urgency. His training told him to trust his instincts. "I understand," he said finally. "Good. One more thing. Check your recent bank statements. Look for anything unusual. And Professor, we know about your background. We know you'll want to verify this is real. Take a cab to Federal Plaza. We'll have Agent Richardson waiting in the lobby to bring you up. Come alone." The line went dead. Milo's hands were steady as he flagged down a cab. Years of clinical work had taught him to compartmentalize emotions. But his mind was a storm of questions. What could the FBI possibly want? And why couldn't he tell Joanna? Joanna. They'd met at a university fundraiser. She was a corporate consultant, brilliant and beautiful, with dark hair and sharp green eyes. Their courtship had been whirlwind, 6 months from first date to wedding. She'd understood his work, supported his research into criminal psychology and behavioral patterns. She was his partner in everything, wasn't she? The cab ride took 15 minutes. Milo used his phone to check his bank accounts. Everything looked normal. Joint checking, savings, his retirement fund, all intact. Nothing unusual. But then he opened their credit card statement. Charges he didn't recognize. Small ones, spread out over months. A storage facility in Brooklyn he'd never heard of. Rental payments for an apartment in Queens. Cash advances totaling nearly $15,000 over the past year. His stomach dropped. Agent Lou Richardson was exactly where promised. A stern woman in her mid-50s with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. She showed her badge, led him to an elevator, and said nothing during the ascent to the 9th floor. The conference room was austere. Gray walls, a long table, 3 chairs. Waiting inside was a man in his early 40s, lean and sharp-featured, with the kind of face that gave nothing away. "Professor Vincent, I'm Agent Russ Richmond. Thank you for coming." "You didn't give me much choice," Milo said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "What's this about?" Richmond gestured to a chair. "Please sit. What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear. I'm a psychologist, Agent Richmond. I've heard plenty of difficult things. Just tell me." Richmond opened a folder, slid a photograph across the table. It was Joanna, but not as Milo knew her. She was younger, her hair blonde instead of dark, standing next to a man Milo didn't recognize. Your wife isn't who you think she is. Chapter 2. The Network. Milo stared at the photograph, his clinical mind already working through the implications. The woman in the picture was unmistakably Joanna. Same bone structure, same posture, but everything else was different. Not just the hair color. Her clothes, her expression, even the way she held herself spoke of a different person entirely. Her real name is Joanna Spencer. Richmond continued, pulling out more photographs. Though she's used at least 6 aliases over the past decade. Corporate consultant was a convenient cover. Her actual occupation is considerably more sinister. Another photo slid across the table. Joanna with a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. Then another. Joanna in what looked like a warehouse, surrounded by crates. Who is she? Milo's voice was calm, but his knuckles were white against the table edge. She's a facilitator for an organization we've been tracking for 3 years. They call themselves the Mercy Collective. Richmond's expression hardened. Don't let the name fool you. They're involved in illegal adoption rings, identity theft, document forgery, and what we believe is a sophisticated blackmail operation targeting wealthy individuals. Milo's breathing remained controlled, but his mind was reeling. 6 years. 6 years of marriage, of intimacy, of sharing his life with someone he thought he knew. The man in the first photo? Richmond tapped the image. That's Roderick Madden. He runs the operation. Former attorney, disbarred 15 years ago for ethics violations. He's smart, connected, and utterly ruthless. And you think my wife, Joanna, works for him? We don't think, Professor. We know. Richmond pulled out a laptop, turned it toward Milo. We've had surveillance on Madden for 18 months. Your wife appears in 43 separate encounters. She's not a low-level operative. She's his second-in-command. The screen showed surveillance footage, grainy but clear enough. Joanna meeting with various people, exchanging envelopes, entering buildings Milo had never heard her mention. Why? The question came out hoarse. Why me? Why would she marry me? Richmond leaned back. That's what took us months to figure out. Then we looked at your background. Your research into criminal psychology, your published work on sociopathic behavior patterns, your consulting work with law enforcement. You're an expert in identifying deception, Professor. You've helped put away some very dangerous people. You think she married me to what? Keep tabs on me. Partially. But we believe there's more. Richmond pulled out another document. 3 years ago, you consulted on a case in Philadelphia. Remember the Castellano family? Milo nodded slowly. Human trafficking ring. I helped build the psychological profile that led to their arrests. Vincent Castellano was Roderick Madden's cousin. They were business partners before the arrest. Madden lost millions when that operation collapsed. Richmond paused. We think Joanna was sent to get close to you. Initially for revenge, then to monitor your work. Make sure you didn't stumble onto their operation. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Their meeting at the fundraiser hadn't been chance. It was calculated. Every intimate moment, every shared secret, every time she'd asked about his cases, all lies. All manipulation. There's something else, Richmond said, his tone shifting. 2 weeks ago, we intercepted communications suggesting Madden's organization is planning something big. Something that requires removing potential threats. Your name came up, Professor. They're going to kill me. We believe so. One of our informants inside the organization, the Barista, Julie Watson, indicated the timeline accelerated recently. We had to warn you immediately. Milo stood, paced to the window. Below, the city moved on, oblivious. His whole life had been a lie. The woman he'd loved, trusted, built a future with, she was a criminal, probably a killer. But beneath the shock, something else stirred. Something colder. Tell me everything, he said, turning back to Richmond. Every detail you have about this organization. About Madden. About my wife's role. Richmond raised an eyebrow. Professor, we're offering witness protection. A new identity, relocation. No. Milo's voice was steel. I'm not running. You said you've been investigating them for 3 years with limited success. I can help you. This isn't academia, Professor. These are dangerous people. I spent 5 years as a prison psychologist before teaching, Agent Richmond. I've interviewed serial killers, cult leaders, and crime bosses. I understand dangerous people. Milo leaned forward. More importantly, I understand Joanna. I know how she thinks, what makes her tick. That's an advantage you don't have. Richmond exchanged a glance with Agent Richardson, who had been silent throughout. Something unspoken passed between them. There's a protocol for this, Richmond finally said. Civilian consultants who assist in active investigations. But it's dangerous, and there are rules. I don't care about the rules, Milo said. These people took 6 years of my life. They used me, manipulated me, and planned to kill me. I want them to pay. Richmond studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, Professor. But first, you need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. The next 2 hours were a deep dive into darkness. Richmond laid out the full scope of the Mercy Collective's operations, not just illegal adoptions and blackmail, but connections to money laundering, political corruption, and at least 3 suspicious deaths. Joanna's role was central. She was the face of their legitimate front, a consulting firm called Spencer & Associates. She built relationships with wealthy clients, identified vulnerabilities, then Madden's organization exploited them. Sometimes it was blackmail. Sometimes it was stealing identities for their adoption ring. Sometimes people simply disappeared. How many people work for them? Milo asked. We've identified at least 20 operatives. But the core group is smaller. Madden, your wife, and a woman named Candace Huff who handles the financial side. There are others, but those 3 run everything. Milo absorbed this, his mind already working through possibilities. You said you have an informant. Julie, the barista. How deep is she? Low level. She did document forgery for them. Fake IDs, credentials. Got cold feet when she realized the scope. She's been feeding us information for 6 months. What's your plan? To arrest them? Richmond shook his head. We need more evidence for charges that'll stick. Madden's too careful, too connected. We've been trying to get someone inside the inner circle, but I can do it, Milo interrupted. Professor, think about it. Joanna still believes I'm clueless. What if I start asking questions? What if I discover something that makes me look like a threat, but also like an asset? Someone they'd want to bring in rather than eliminate. Richmond frowned. That's incredibly risky. So is letting them continue. Milo's jaw tightened. They've been using my expertise against me for years. It's time I return the favor. Agent Richardson finally spoke. He's right, Russ. The professor has psychological leverage we can't replicate. He knows the wife intimately. He can read her tells, anticipate her moves. It could get him killed, Richmond countered. I'm already marked for death, Milo said quietly. At least this way, I'm not a passive victim. I'm fighting back. Richmond was silent for a long moment, then sighed. You'd have to follow our protocols exactly. Wear a wire when possible. Report everything. And if we pull you out, you don't argue. Agreed. And you understand. If this goes wrong, if they catch on, we might not be able to save you in time. Milo thought of the past 6 years. The lies, the manipulation, the intimacy that had all been performance. A cold fury settled in his chest. I understand perfectly, Agent Richmond. Now tell me how we bring them down. Chapter 3, The Mask. Milo didn't go home that night. Instead, he checked into a hotel under a false name, something Richmond arranged, and spent hours reviewing files on the Mercy Collective. Surveillance photos, financial records, testimony from Julie Watson, intercepted communications. He absorbed every detail with the methodical precision that had made him one of the country's leading experts on criminal behavior. But he wasn't just studying them professionally. He was studying them personally, especially Joanna. Looking at the surveillance footage with new eyes, he began to see things he'd missed. The way she held herself differently in these videos, more confident, more predatory. Her smile, which he'd always thought was warm, now looked calculated. Every gesture, every expression was a performance. How had he missed it? He, who had published 3 books on identifying deception, who had lectured at Quantico on behavioral analysis. How had his own wife fooled him so completely? The answer, he realized with bitter clarity, was that she'd studied him as thoroughly as he'd studied criminal minds. She knew his blind spots, his psychological weaknesses. Love had been her weapon, and he'd never seen it coming. His phone buzzed. Joanna, where are you? Getting worried. Please call me. The message made his skin crawl. How many times had she sent loving texts while planning his death? How many intimate moments had been nothing but data collection? He didn't reply. Around midnight, Richmond called. We need to discuss strategy. Tomorrow, you'll go home. Act normal. But first, we need to prepare you for what comes next. I'm ready. Are you? Richmond's voice was skeptical. Because what I'm about to ask you to do goes against everything you've believed for 6 years. Try me. You're going to have to lie to your wife. Convincingly. You're going to have to sleep next to someone you now know is planning to kill you. You're going to have to maintain the facade of loving her while helping us build a case against her. Richmond paused. Most people can't do that, Professor. The psychological strain breaks them. Milo thought about this. About compartmentalization, about cognitive dissonance, about the mental gymnastics required to maintain two contradictory realities simultaneously. I've interviewed men who killed their families and showed no remorse, he said quietly. I've sat across from psychopaths who describe torture with the same enthusiasm most people reserve for hobbies. I've learned to separate emotion from analysis. I can do this. I hope you're right. They spent the next several hours preparing. Richmond briefed him on a microsurveillance device, a button camera for his jacket, nearly invisible, a recording app for his phone that would activate with a specific code, protocols for emergency contact if he felt threatened. Most importantly, Richmond said, you need a story for where you've been tonight. They crafted one together. Milo had been visiting his old friend Arthur Todd, a fellow professor who lived upstate. Arthur would corroborate if asked. Richmond would brief him separately. The FBI had already confiscated Milo's car from the university parking lot and moved it to Arthur's house, creating a digital trail that supported the story. What about my behavior? Milo asked. Won't Joanna notice something's different? That's where your expertise comes in. You need to act suspicious enough that she notices something's wrong, but not so suspicious that she knows you're onto her. You want me to make her nervous. Exactly. Make her think you're asking questions, getting close to something. That's when Madden's organization will either try to kill you or, if we play this right, try to bring you in. Why would they bring me in? Richmond smiled grimly. Because you're valuable. Your expertise in psychological manipulation, your connections to law enforcement, your research, all of it could be useful to them. If they think you're corruptible, that you've discovered their operation but might be willing to join rather than expose it, they'll try to turn you. And once I'm inside their inner circle, I can gather the evidence you need. Precisely. But Professor, this only works if you're completely convincing. If Joanna suspects for 1 second that you're working with us, you're dead. Milo nodded slowly. Then I'd better be convincing. The next morning, Milo drove home. His hands were steady on the wheel, his expression calm. But inside, his mind was a tactical battlefield, planning every word, every gesture. He pulled into the driveway at 9:47 a.m. Joanna's car was in the garage. She was home. Probably frantic by now, given his silence last night. The front door opened before he could use his key. Joanna stood in the doorway, wearing his favorite blue dress, her face a perfect mask of concern and relief. Milo, oh my God, where have you been? I've been calling and texting. She reached for him, and Milo forced himself not to flinch. Instead, he pulled her into an embrace, feeling the familiar warmth of her body against his. It took every ounce of control not to recoil. I'm sorry, he said, his voice tired. My phone died. I drove up to see Arthur last night. Needed to clear my head. Clear your head? What's wrong? She pulled back, searching his face. Her green eyes he'd loved, now looked alien to him. It's nothing. Just work stress. A difficult case I'm consulting on. He moved past her into the house, every detail now suspicious. Had she placed cameras? Listening devices? How much did Madden know about his daily life? You could have told me, Joanna said, following him to the kitchen. I was worried sick. I know. I'm sorry. He poured coffee, noting that his hands didn't shake. Good. Did I miss anything here? No, just worried about you. She touched his arm gently. Are you sure you're okay? This was the test. This was where he had to plant the first seed. Actually, there is something. He turned to face her, his expression troubled. I've been noticing some unusual charges on our credit card. Storage facilities, rental payments I don't remember making. Do you know anything about that? For just a fraction of a second, less than a heartbeat, something flickered across Joanna's face. Not guilt. Not fear. Something colder. Calculation. Then it was gone, replaced by confusion. What charges? I haven't seen anything unusual. I'll show you. He pulled out his phone, opened the credit card app, watched her face carefully as she looked at the screen. She was good. Her micro-expressions were tightly controlled. But Milo had spent 20 years studying human behavior, and he caught it, the slight tension in her jaw, the way her pupils constricted fractionally. That's strange, she said slowly. I don't recognize these. Could it be fraud? Maybe. I'm going to call the bank, get it sorted out. He kept his tone casual, but added, although it's weird, these charges go back almost a year. You'd think we'd have noticed sooner. Well, you're so busy with your cases, and I've been traveling a lot for work. She kissed his cheek. I'm sure it's just identity theft. We'll fix it. Yeah, probably. He held her gaze a moment longer than necessary. How's work going, by the way? You mentioned a big client last week. Oh, it fell through. But there's always another opportunity. She smiled, but Milo saw the assessment behind her eyes. She was analyzing him, trying to determine if this was genuine confusion or something more. Good. Let her wonder. The rest of the day passed in careful performance. Milo went to campus, taught his afternoon seminar on psychopathic personalities, an irony not lost on him. Between classes, he texted Richmond. First contact made. She's suspicious, but not alarmed. Next phase. The response came minutes later. Good. Continue pattern. Ask more questions over the next few days. Make her think you're investigating the charges. We'll monitor her communications. That evening, Milo did something he'd never done before. While Joanna showered, he went through her belongings. Not obviously, he was too smart for that. But he looked, really looked. Her laptop was password protected, but he noted the model, the stickers she'd placed on it. In her car, he found nothing unusual, but he memorized the mileage, checked the GPS history. In her study, he photographed documents that seemed innocuous but might mean something to Richmond. He was in bed, reading, when she emerged from the bathroom. She wore silk pajamas, her dark hair damp and smelling of lavender. Once, the sight would have made him smile. Now, he saw only the predator beneath the performance. You seem distracted, she said, sliding into bed beside him. Just thinking about those charges. I called the bank. They're investigating. Good. She turned off her lamp. Try not to stress about it. These things happen. In the darkness, Milo stared at the ceiling. Beside him, the woman who'd shared his life for 6 years breathed softly, already asleep or pretending to be. He thought about Richmond's question. Can you really do this? The answer, Milo realized, was yes. Because this wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about reclaiming himself from someone who'd stolen 6 years of his life. It was about proving that he wasn't the naive fool she'd taken him for. And most importantly, it was about making sure that Joanna Spencer Vincent and everyone in her organization paid for every lie, every manipulation, every life they destroyed. The game had begun, and this time, Milo Vincent was going to win. Chapter 4, Digging Deeper. Over the next week, Milo transformed himself into exactly what the Mercy Collective needed to see. A man who discovered too much, but might be corruptible. He started small. Casual questions about Joanna's consulting firm, Spencer and Associates. Where was her office? Could he visit sometime? What kind of clients did she work with? I'm actually thinking about writing a new book, he told her over breakfast on Wednesday. Corporate psychology, decision-making under pressure. Your work could provide great case studies. Joanna's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. My clients value their privacy, Milo. Confidentiality agreements, and all that. Of course. Just thought I'd ask. But he kept asking, kept probing. Meanwhile, Richmond's team monitored every communication, and they started seeing results. Joanna's phone records showed increased calls to 2 numbers, one registered to Roderick Madden, the other to Candace Huff. The surveillance team reported that Joanna had driven to Queens twice that week, to an address that matched one of the rental charges Milo had questioned. She's reporting to them, Richmond told Milo during a clandestine meeting in a parking garage. Telling them you're asking questions. Good. That means the plan's working. Milo handed over a thumb drive. I copied some files from her laptop last night while she was sleeping. Encrypted, but maybe your tech people can crack them. Richmond looked impressed despite himself. You're taking risks, Professor. Calculated once. Milo's expression was grim. I've been studying her patterns. Every Thursday, she has a client dinner that runs late. She's usually home around 11. That gives me 3 hours tomorrow night. 3 hours for what? To follow her. See where she really goes. Absolutely not, Richmond said sharply. That's too dangerous. If she spots you. She won't. I know her routines, her blind spots. And you need to know where their operations are based. We have surveillance teams who've been watching them for 3 years with limited progress. Milo's voice was steel. Agent Richmond, I'm not asking permission. I'm doing this. You can either support me or not. Richmond's jaw tightened. After a long moment, he sighed. Fine, but you were the camera, and we'll have a team nearby in case things go wrong. Thursday evening came. Joanna kissed Milo goodbye at 6:30, promising to be home by 11. Don't wait up, she said with that practiced smile. Drive safe, Milo replied, his own smile equally false. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, he moved, changed into dark clothes, grabbed his phone with the tracking app Richmond had provided, and followed at a careful distance in the Honda he'd borrowed from Arthur. His own car would be too recognizable. Joanna didn't go to any restaurant. Instead, she drove to Brooklyn, to an industrial neighborhood near the waterfront. Milo parked 2 blocks away and followed on foot, the button camera Richmond provided capturing everything. She entered a warehouse. Old brick, no obvious signage. Milo circled the building, found a window. Through it, he could see an office on the 2nd floor, lights on. He couldn't get closer without risking exposure, but he'd seen enough. He photographed the address, the building, the vehicles parked outside, including Joanna's and 2 others. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. A young woman, maybe 20, being escorted into the building by 2 men. She looked terrified. Milo's finger moved to his phone, ready to call 911. But Richmond's voice in his ear, he'd been given a small earpiece for the operation, stopped him. Don't. Not yet. We need the full picture, or they'll scatter. There's a woman. I know. We're watching. But if you intervene now, we lose everything. Madden walks, Joanna walks, and that woman isn't the only one who'll suffer. Milo forced himself to stand down, to think strategically. Richmond was right. One rescue wouldn't stop the operation, but bringing down the entire network would save dozens, maybe hundreds. But the knowledge burned. He watched for another 20 minutes, documenting everything. Then, careful to leave before Joanna, he drove back home, arriving just before 10 p.m. By the time Joanna returned at 11:15, Milo was in bed, apparently asleep. But his mind was racing, processing everything he'd seen. The next morning, he met Richmond at a different location, a safe house in Westchester. The building is one of their main hubs, Richmond confirmed after reviewing Milo's footage. We've had it under surveillance, but seeing inside helps. The woman you saw, we've identified her. Maria Castellanos, 21, reported missing from Texas 3 months ago. You have to get her out. We will. But carefully. Richmond pulled up files on a laptop. The good news is, your wife is definitely nervous. We intercepted a call between her and Madden. They're discussing you. What did they say? Richmond played an audio recording. Joanna's voice, tense. He's asking too many questions. About the charges, about my work. He's smart, Roderick. Too smart. Madden's voice was smooth, controlled. Then maybe it's time we brought him into the conversation. Your reports say he's been consulting on that organized crime case in Newark. The one that could cause problems for our friends in Jersey. What if Professor Vincent could be persuaded to influence the investigation? You think he'd help us? People have prices, Joanna. Even idealistic professors. Find his. The recording ended. Milo felt a cold satisfaction. The hook was set. They're going to approach you, Richmond said. Probably soon. You need to be ready. I am. Milo's mind was already planning. They'll start with something small. Test me. See if I'm corruptible. And you'll say yes. I'll say maybe. Make them work for it. If I'm too eager, they'll be suspicious. But if I show hesitation, then slowly come around. Especially if they offer the right incentives, it'll seem genuine. Richmond studied him. You're getting good at this, Professor. Maybe too good. That's what it takes to beat them. Milo's expression was hard. They spent years studying me, learning my weaknesses, exploiting them. Now it's my turn. Chapter 5, The Offer. The approach came 3 days later, but not from Joanna. Milo was leaving campus after his evening seminar when a black Mercedes pulled alongside him in the parking lot. The window rolled down, revealing a silver-haired man in his 60s, impeccably dressed. Roderick Madden. Professor Vincent? I'm Roderick Madden, a friend of your wife's. Could we talk? Milo's heart rate spiked, but he kept his expression neutral. I'm sorry, do I know you? Not yet, but I think we have mutual interests to discuss. Madden's smile was urbane, practiced. Perhaps over coffee? There's a place nearby, neutral ground. Just 30 minutes of your time. Every instinct screamed danger. But this was exactly what they'd been waiting for. All right, 30 minutes. The coffee shop was upscale, private booths. Madden led him to one in the back, away from windows. Professional. Cautious. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Professor. I know this must seem unusual. That's one word for it. Milo kept his tone wary but curious. What's this about? Your wife is concerned about you. She's noticed you've been stressed, asking questions about financial irregularities. She's worried, and frankly, so am I. Why would you be worried about my financial issues? Because they're not financial issues, Professor. They're complications stemming from Joanna's real work. Milo let surprise cross his face, calculated, not overdone. Her consulting? Is a front. I think you've begun to suspect that. Madden leaned back, assessing. You're an intelligent man, Professor Vincent. One of the foremost experts on criminal psychology in the country. You've helped law enforcement put away some very dangerous people. That kind of expertise doesn't go unnoticed. What are you saying? I'm saying that your wife works for me. Has for 12 years. And I'm saying that perhaps it's time we discuss the real reason she married you. Milo let anger flicker across his face. You're telling me that your marriage was initially strategic? Yes. Madden showed no remorse. 3 years ago, you helped dismantle a business operation I had invested in. The Castellano trafficking ring. Your profile work was impressive. It also cost me a great deal of money and some valuable associates. So she married me for revenge? Initially. But something unexpected happened. She came to respect you. To see your value beyond revenge. Madden signaled a waitress for more coffee. You're wasted in academia, Professor. Your talents could be applied to much more lucrative pursuits. You're asking me to work for you? For a criminal organization? Milo let his voice rise slightly, then caught himself, glancing around. Lower, angrier. This is insane. Is it? Consider your situation. You've dedicated your life to understanding criminals, helping law enforcement catch them. And what has it gotten you? A modest professor's salary, a wife who initially married you under false pretenses, and now, the knowledge that everything you believed about your life is a lie. Madden's words were calculated to wound, to create resentment. Milo let them hit. What I'm offering, Madden continued, is honesty. An opportunity. Work with us. Use your expertise to help our organization navigate certain complications. In return, you'll be compensated generously. And perhaps, you and Joanna can build something real, now that the truth is out. Milo was silent, letting Madden think he was considering. In reality, he was documenting every word via the recording device Richmond's team had embedded in his watch. I need time to think about this, he said finally. Of course. But Professor, understand that you knowing our operation exists puts us in a difficult position. We need to know where your loyalties lie. Silence is not an option. Either you join us, or the threat hung unspoken, or you kill me. I prefer not to think in such crude terms. But yes, essentially. Madden's smile was almost apologetic. You have until Monday. Discuss it with Joanna. She can answer your questions more fully. But make no mistake, this decision will determine your future. Choose wisely. Madden stood, placed a business card on the table. My personal number. When you've decided, call. Then he was gone, leaving Milo alone with the weight of the ultimatum. Milo didn't go home immediately. Instead, he drove to the emergency contact point Richmond had designated, a gym parking lot in Yonkers. Richmond was there within 20 minutes. Did you get it? Milo asked. Every word. That's conspiracy to commit murder, extortion, and confirmation of Joanna's involvement. Richmond's expression was grim. This is good, Professor. Very good. It's not enough, though, is it? Not for the full organization. We need documentation, financial records, evidence of their operations. We need to know who their clients are, where the money goes, how they move people across state lines. Which means I have to say yes. It means you have to pretend to say yes. Richmond's tone was cautionary. The moment you're inside their inner circle, you become even more valuable as a target. They'll be watching you constantly. I understand the risks. Do you? Because Madden isn't stupid. He'll test you. Probably ask you to do something illegal, something that compromises you, makes you complicit. Then I'll do it. Professor, I'll do it, Milo repeated, his voice hard. Whatever it takes. They spent 6 years manipulating me. Now it's my turn. Richmond studied him for a long moment. You've changed since this started. Yes, I have. Milo's expression was cold. I've stopped being their victim. Now I'm their enemy. And enemies don't win by playing nice. Just don't lose yourself in this. Revenge is a dangerous motivation. This isn't revenge, Agent Richmond. It's justice. Milo's jaw tightened. There's a difference. But as he drove home, Milo wondered if that was entirely true. The anger that burned in him, the satisfaction he felt in deceiving Joanna the way she deceived him. Was that justice? Or was it something darker? He pushed the thought aside. It didn't matter. What mattered was bringing them down. Joanna was waiting when he got home. She looked nervous, genuinely nervous, for perhaps the first time since he'd discovered the truth. Roderick called me, she said quietly. Told me about your meeting. Did he tell you everything? About why you really married me? Milo. 6 years, Joanna. 6 years of lies. It wasn't all lies. Her voice cracked, and for a moment, Milo saw something that might have been real emotion. At first, yes. It was an assignment. But over time, things changed. I changed. How am I supposed to believe that? You're not. I know that. She sat down, looking suddenly exhausted. But it's true. You're brilliant, Milo. Kind. You saw the best in me, even when I didn't deserve it. And somewhere along the way, the performance became real. It was a good act. Maybe even partially true. But Milo was past the point of caring. Roderick gave me until Monday to decide. To join you, or... He let the sentence trail off. I won't let him hurt you, Joanna said quickly. If you say no, I'll find a way to protect you. How? By killing me yourself instead of letting him do it. The accusation hung between them. Joanna didn't deny it. What do you want me to say, Milo? That I'm not a criminal? I am. That I haven't done terrible things? I have. But I never wanted to hurt you. And I don't want to lose you now. Milo sat down across from her. This was the performance of his life. If I do this, if I work with Madden, I need to know everything. No more lies. No more secrets. Hope flickered in Joanna's eyes. You're considering it? I'm tired of being broke, Joanna. Tired of watching guilty people walk free because of technicalities while I slave away for a university salary. Tired of being the good guy who finishes last. He met her gaze. If this is the truth about the world, that people like Madden win and people like me get played, then maybe it's time I stopped being naive. It was exactly what Madden would want to hear. Exactly the rationalization a corrupt person would use. Joanna seemed to believe it. Okay, she said slowly. Okay, I'll tell you everything. And over the next 3 hours, she did. Or at least, she told him enough. The Mercy Collective wasn't just one operation, it was a network. Illegal adoptions were just the start. They also moved money for other criminal organizations, provided false identities, facilitated blackmail schemes. Madden had contacts in corporations, law enforcement, even government. Your role would be consultation, Joanna explained. We have clients who need psychological expertise. How to manipulate targets, how to identify weaknesses, how to present operations that seem legitimate. Your credentials would make you perfect. And you be okay with this? Me being part of your world. I'd prefer us being honest with each other than you being dead. By the time the conversation ended, Milo had enough information for Richmond to start building the real case. But he needed more. He needed to be inside. I'll call Madden tomorrow, he said finally. Tell him I'm in. But I have conditions. What conditions? I want to know everything. Meet everyone. Understand the full operation. If I'm risking everything, I'm not doing it blind. Joanna nodded slowly. I'll talk to Roderick. Set up a meeting with the core team. Good. That night, lying in the darkness, Milo texted Richmond. Hook, line, and sinker. Preparing for full infiltration. The response came seconds later. Be careful, Professor. You're walking into the lion's den. Milo stared at the phone, then at the ceiling. Beside him, Joanna breathed softly in sleep. He wasn't walking into the lion's den. He was bringing the den down around them. Chapter 6. Inside the Collective. The meeting was set for Saturday night. An estate in Connecticut. Madden's private property, hidden behind gates and guards. Paranoid, isn't he? Milo observed as they drove through the entrance. Careful, Joanna corrected. There's a difference. Inside, the house was impressive. Old money aesthetic, art that was probably original, furniture that spoke of wealth accumulated over decades. But Milo barely noticed. His focus was on the people. Roderick Madden waited in a study that could have belonged to a corporate executive. But beside him were two others Milo hadn't met. Professor Vincent. Thank you for coming. Madden gestured to the others. This is Candace Huff, our financial officer, and Rory Velasquez, who handles our logistics. Candace was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and professional. Rory was younger, maybe 30, with the bearing of someone who'd seen violence. So you're the famous psychologist, Candace said, her tone appraising. Joanna's spoken highly of you. Before or after you all decided to kill me? Milo kept his tone light, but the edge was deliberate. Rory chuckled. I like him. He's got spine. Indeed. Madden poured drinks, expensive scotch, Milo noted. Let's discuss terms. You've agreed to consult for us. What exactly can you offer? This was the test. Milo had prepared for this with Richmond. I can offer 3 things. First, psychological profiling of your targets, understanding vulnerabilities, pressure points, how to manipulate them effectively. Second, assessment of your operatives, who's trustworthy, who might flip, who's a liability. Third, consultation on law enforcement psychology, how investigations develop, what triggers suspicion, how to stay ahead of surveillance. The room was silent as Madden considered. Impressive. And you're comfortable with the moral implications? I stopped believing in absolute morality 6 years ago when I discovered my wife married me under false pretenses. Milo's tone was bitter, calculated bitterness, but it sold. The world is full of predators and prey. I'm tired of being prey. Candace exchanged a glance with Madden. What do you know about our current operations? Not enough. Joanna gave me an overview. But if I'm going to be useful, I need details. Clients, operations, objectives. That's sensitive information, Rory said warily. And I'm a sensitive asset, Milo countered. You're asking me to risk everything. Federal prison, my career, my reputation. I don't do that blind. Madden smiled, a genuine smile this time. You're right. If you're truly with us, you need the full picture. He opened a laptop, turned it toward Milo. This is our current portfolio. For the next hour, Milo absorbed everything. Client names, operations in progress, financial structures. He memorized what he could, knowing Richmond would want every detail. But he also saw the scope of their operation, and it was worse than he'd imagined. They weren't just criminals. They were architects of misery, destroying lives systematically for profit. Maria Castellanos, the woman he'd seen at the warehouse, was one of 17 women they were currently processing for their adoption ring. Women from Central America, promised jobs in the U.S., then trapped. A politician in Albany was being blackmailed over financial misconduct they'd helped him commit. A corporate executive was paying them to make a whistleblower disappear. The list went on and on. Milo kept his expression neutral, playing the part of someone evaluating opportunities rather than documenting crimes. This is extensive, he said finally. You've built an impressive operation. We prefer to think of it as a business, Candace said. Supply and demand. We provide services people need. People need to traffic women? The question came out harder than Milo intended. People need solutions to complex problems, Madden corrected smoothly. We don't judge our clients, Professor. We simply facilitate. It took everything Milo had not to react viscerally. But he swallowed his rage, nodded as if considering this logic. Fair enough. So where do you need me first? We have a situation in Manhattan, Madden said. A client, a real estate developer, is being investigated by the SEC. We need to know how serious the investigation is, what they have, what they're looking for. You have contacts in law enforcement. I do, Milo admitted. But using them exposes me. You'll be compensated. $200,000, wired to an offshore account. Madden's smile widened. Consider it your signing bonus. $200,000. It was a fortune compared to his professor's salary. The kind of money that could tempt even an honest man. Good thing Milo wasn't being honest. I'll need time to reach out carefully. These things can't be rushed. You have a week. Candace will provide you the client's details. The meeting continued another hour, discussing logistics, communication protocols, payment structures. By the end, Milo was officially part of the Mercy Collective's inner circle. As they drove home, Joanna was silent. Finally, she said, you were convincing tonight. Was I? Almost too convincing. She glanced at him. Are you really okay with this, Milo? Or are you just playing along? It was the moment of truth. Milo met her gaze, his expression carefully crafted, resignation mixed with pragmatic acceptance. I'm not happy about it, but I'm realistic. You win, Joanna. The naive professor who believed in justice and morality? He died the moment I found out the truth. This is survival now. She seemed to accept this. But Milo saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. He'd have to be more careful. Joanna knew him too well. One slip, one inconsistency, and she'd figure out he was playing them. But that was the game, and Milo was determined to win. The next morning, in a parking lot 30 miles from home, Milo met Richmond and uploaded everything. Jesus, Richmond breathed, scrolling through the information. This is big, Professor. Bigger than we thought. With this, we can bring RICO charges, interstate trafficking, conspiracy. But you need more than my word, Milo finished. You need hard evidence. Documentation. Exactly. Can you get access to their financial records? Server access. Possibly. Candace mentioned they keep everything on encrypted servers, air-gapped from the internet. Very secure. We'll get our tech team working on options. Richmond looked at Milo with something like respect. You did good, Professor. Really good. But this is where it gets dangerous. You're inside now. They'll be watching you closely. I know. The SEC investigation they want you to infiltrate. We need to handle that carefully. You can't actually compromise an investigation. I wasn't planning to. But I can feed them false information, make them think I'm useful while actually leading them into traps. Richmond nodded slowly. You've really embraced this role. I've embraced winning. Milo's expression hardened. These people destroyed lives, Richmond. That woman at the warehouse, Maria Castellanos, she's one of 17. 17 women being trafficked. How many more are there that we don't know about? How many victims over the years? We'll get them. All of them. We better. Because I'm not doing this just to put them in prison. I'm doing this to make sure they can never hurt anyone again. As Milo drove back, he thought about the path he was walking. He'd crossed lines, legal and ethical lines. He was lying, manipulating, playing games with dangerous people. But every time doubt crept in, he thought about those 17 women, about the countless others the Mercy Collective had destroyed. And he reminded himself, sometimes, to beat monsters, you had to think like one. The difference was, he'd stop when they were defeated. He hoped. Chapter 7. The Trap Springs. Over the next 2 weeks, Milo Vincent became the perfect asset for the Mercy Collective, on the surface. He provided Madden with information about the SEC investigation, carefully crafted by Richmond's team to seem legitimate while actually being useless. He conducted psychological assessments of their clients, writing detailed profiles that Candace praised as insightful. He even sat in on meetings where they discussed expanding their operations into pharmaceutical distribution. But beneath the performance, Milo was building something else entirely, a systematic dismantling of everything Madden had created. Working with Richmond's cybersecurity team, Milo had planted a sophisticated keylogger on Candace's laptop during a meeting, brushing against her bag while retrieving a dropped pen, sliding in a USB device that worked in seconds. That single breach gave the FBI access to financial records spanning 5 years. During consultation sessions with Rory, Milo had carefully extracted information about their logistics network, safe houses, transport routes, contacts in customs and border security. All of it went straight to Richmond. And with Joanna, he played perhaps his most dangerous game. He'd become the man she wanted him to be. Cynical, pragmatic, occasionally showing flashes of the connection they'd once shared. It kept her off guard, kept her believing his transformation was genuine. You seem different lately, she observed one evening. They were having dinner, a rare moment of domesticity in their increasingly complicated arrangement. Different how? More confident. More comfortable with all this. She studied him across the table. It suits you, actually. Maybe this is who I always was, Milo said quietly. Maybe I just needed permission to stop pretending. It was exactly the kind of philosophical observation the old Milo would make, twisted just enough to seem corrupted. Joanna smiled, seemingly satisfied. But that night, while she slept, Milo copied the encrypted files from her laptop, files that contained client lists, operation details, evidence of dozens of crimes. He'd learned her passwords weeks ago by watching her typing patterns, a skill from his behavioral psychology background. Richmond's team was ecstatic. This is it, Professor. This is everything we need. We can move in 72 hours. Not yet, Milo said. What? Why not? Because there's something bigger here. Madden mentioned contacts in government, in law enforcement. If we move now, we get him and his inner circle. But the people protecting them, enabling them, they walk free. We can't prove those connections exist, Richmond argued. Then let me get the proof. How? Milo had been thinking about this for days. Madden trusts me now. He's going to involve me in something major. He said as much in our last meeting. When he does, he'll need to bring in his protected contacts. That's when we'll have everything. Richmond was silent for a long moment. That's a huge risk. If something goes wrong, it won't. You don't know that. I know Madden, Milo countered. I've been studying him for weeks. He's arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable. That arrogance will make him careless. The opportunity came faster than expected. On a Wednesday afternoon, Madden called Milo to his estate. We have a situation. I need your expertise immediately. When Milo arrived, the atmosphere was tense. Candace, Rory, and Joanna were already there, along with two men Milo didn't recognize, one in an expensive suit, the other with the hard eyes of someone who'd seen combat. Professor Vincent, this is District Attorney Sidney Klein and his associate, Cedric Doyle. Madden's tone was careful. Mr. Klein has been a valuable ally. Mr. Doyle handles certain sensitive matters for us. Sidney Klein was the DA for a major county in New York. His presence here was explosive, direct evidence of corruption at the highest levels. Gentlemen, Milo said, keeping his expression neutral even as his mind raced. This was it. The proof Richmond needed. We have a problem, Klein said without preamble. There's a federal investigation into my office. Someone's been feeding information to the FBI about cases I've buried, evidence I've suppressed. I need to know who. You think it's someone in your office? Milo asked. It has to be. Only 4 people have access to those files. Me and 3 assistant DAs. I need to know which one is the rat. This was the test. Madden was watching Milo carefully, assessing how he'd handle a real crisis. I can do that, Milo said. But I'll need access to all 4 people. Interviews, observation, access to their communications. Whatever you need, Klein said. Just find them fast. The FBI is getting close. Over the next 48 hours, Milo conducted the most intensive psychological assessment of his career while secretly feeding every detail to Richmond. He interviewed Klein's 3 assistant DAs, Mary Valdez, Arthur Todd, his friend, ironically placed in the DA's office and not the informant, and Titus Barr. He studied their communication patterns, their stress responses, their behavioral tells. The actual informant, Richmond had told him, was Titus Barr, a prosecutor who'd grown disgusted with Klein's corruption. But Milo couldn't simply identify him. That would get Barr killed. So he crafted a lie. It's not any of them, Milo told the assembled group in Madden's study. Your leak is external. Someone who's been accessing your digital files remotely. Probably someone with law enforcement training who knows how to cover their tracks. He presented fabricated evidence, carefully constructed to seem legitimate. A cyber trail that led nowhere, IP addresses that belonged to public networks, patterns that suggested external infiltration rather than internal betrayal. Klein bought it. So did Madden. Excellent work, Professor, Madden said. You've just saved Mr. Klein a significant problem. And potentially saved us all, Candace added. If the FBI had testimony from someone inside the DA's office, we'd all be exposed. Joanna looked at Milo with something like pride. You're good at this. Milo shrugged, playing modest. But inside, he felt the pieces falling into place. Richmond now had everything. Klein's corruption, evidence of Madden's entire network, documentation of dozens of crimes. But most importantly, they had it all on record. Milo had been wearing the camera Richmond provided to every meeting. We're moving in tomorrow, Richmond told him during an emergency meeting that night. We've coordinated with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Simultaneous raids on Madden's estate, the warehouse in Brooklyn, Klein's office, Candace's residence. We're taking them all down at once. What about Joanna? Milo asked quietly. She'll be arrested with the others. Is that a problem? Milo thought about the woman who'd shared his bed for 6 years. The woman who'd lied to him, manipulated him, planned his death. The woman who'd occasionally shown flashes of something that might have been genuine feeling. No, he said finally. It's not a problem. Good. Because, Professor, you need to be far away when this happens. We're pulling you out tonight. I need to go home one more time. Get some things. Too risky. I need closure, Richmond. One last night. Then I disappear until the arrests are made. Richmond hesitated, then nodded. Fine. But this is it. After tomorrow, your old life ends. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Milo arrived home at 8 p.m. Joanna was in the kitchen, cooking dinner, a scene of domestic normalcy that would have been comforting once. Now it felt surreal. Hey, she said, smiling. I'm making your favorite. Figured we could celebrate. Madden was really impressed with how you handled the Klein situation. Yeah, it worked out. Milo poured wine, his movements calm despite the tension coiling in his chest. They ate dinner making small talk. Joanna chatted about a new client, about weekend plans. Milo responded automatically, his mind elsewhere. This was the last time he'd sit across from her. The last time they'd share a meal. Tomorrow, federal agents would storm through that door, and everything would change. Part of him, a small, traitorous part, felt something like sadness. Not for what they'd had, but for what he'd thought they'd had. For the illusion that had been so carefully constructed and so thoroughly destroyed. You're quiet tonight, Joanna observed. Just tired. It's been an intense few weeks. But worth it, right? The money's good. The work is actually interesting. She reached across the table, took his hand. And we're finally being honest with each other. Honest. The word was almost laughable. But Milo nodded, squeezed her hand gently. Yeah, honest. After dinner, they went to bed. Milo lay in the darkness, listening to Joanna's breathing slow as she fell asleep. He thought about the past 6 years. About the man he'd been. Naive, idealistic, believing in justice and truth. That man was gone, killed by betrayal and replaced by someone harder, colder, but also someone more effective. Someone who'd infiltrated a criminal organization, gathered evidence that would destroy dozens of lives, and brought down a network that had operated with impunity for years. Was he better now? Or just more broken? At 2 a.m., Milo quietly got out of bed. He packed a small bag, essentials only. Left a letter on his desk, not for Joanna, but for Richmond, containing final observations about the organization. Then he walked out of the house for the last time. The raids happened at 6 a.m. Milo watched from Richmond's surveillance van, parked 3 blocks away. Multiple teams hitting multiple locations simultaneously. The warehouse in Brooklyn went down first. 17 women rescued, including Maria Castellanos. 3 of Madden's men arrested. Then Candace's residence. She was dragged out in handcuffs, screaming about lawyers and rights. Klein's office was surrounded by federal marshals. The DA, who'd thought himself untouchable, was arrested in his own building. And finally, Madden's estate. The silver-haired man who'd orchestrated so much misery was arrested in his study, surrounded by the art and luxury his crimes had purchased. Throughout it all, Joanna's phone rang constantly. Calls from panicking associates, from clients cutting ties, from lawyers. She didn't answer any of them. When the federal agents came to Milo's house, Joanna was still in bed. She looked confused at first, then comprehending. Then, when they told her what they had, defeated. Professor Vincent has been working with us for weeks, Agent Richardson told her. Everything you said, everything you did, he documented it all. You're done. Milo watched Joanna's face on the surveillance feed. Saw the moment she understood. The betrayal she felt was almost tangible, even through the camera. Good, he thought with cold satisfaction. Now she knows how it feels. The prosecutions moved swiftly. With Milo's evidence, hours of recordings, documents, financial records, there was no defense. One by one, the Mercy Collective's members took plea deals or went to trial and lost. Candace Huff, 15 years for money laundering and conspiracy. Rory Velasquez, 20 years for human trafficking and racketeering. Sidney Klein, the DA who'd corrupted his office, got 12 years in disbarment. Roderick Madden, life in prison without parole. Multiple RICO charges, human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder. The judge called him a predator of the worst kind, who corrupted everything he touched. And Joanna Spencer Vincent, 25 years. She tried to claim she was coerced, that she'd been manipulated by Madden. But the evidence showed otherwise. She'd been a willing participant in everything. At her sentencing, she looked directly at Milo, who'd come to witness it. You played me, she said quietly. Just like I played you. No, Milo replied. I gave you justice. There's a difference. Is there? Or did you just become what you hated? The question haunted Milo as he left the courthouse. Had he crossed a line? Had his pursuit of justice turned into something uglier? He thought about the 17 women rescued from the warehouse, about the dozens of victims in other cases who'd finally gotten justice, about the corrupt DA who'd been arrested, the criminal networks that had been dismantled. The body count was good. The impact was real. But the cost. Richmond found him later that evening at a bar near the university. You did good work, Professor. The Bureau wants to officially commend you. I don't want commendation. I want to forget any of this happened. Can you? Forget, I mean. Milo sipped his drink. Probably not. But I can try. What will you do now? Go back to teaching. To research. To my life. Milo smiled without humor. Or whatever's left of it. The Bureau could use someone like you. Consulting, profiling. No. Milo's voice was firm. I spent months living as a criminal, thinking like a criminal. I'm done with that world. Richmond nodded, understanding. Fair enough. But Professor, for what it's worth, you saved lives. Real lives. That matters. Does it? Because I'm not sure I recognize myself anymore. That's the price of fighting monsters. You have to get close enough to see their teeth. Richmond stood to leave. But you didn't become one. Remember that. You didn't become one. Chapter 9, Rebirth. 6 months later, Milo stood in front of a new class, Behavioral Psychology 401. 30 faces looked back at him, eager and young and untouched by the darkness he'd seen. Today, he said, we're going to discuss the nature of deception, how it works, why it works, and most importantly, how to protect yourself from it. As he lectured, Milo found himself speaking with an authority he hadn't possessed before. He talked about manipulation not as an academic concept, but as a lived reality. About trust and betrayal, about the masks people wear, about the difficulty of truly knowing anyone. The students were riveted. After class, a young woman approached him, Rochelle Chong, one of his brightest students. Professor Vincent, that was incredible. Your insights into psychological manipulation, they're so detailed. Have you experienced that kind of deception personally? Milo paused. Yes, I have. And how did you deal with it? I faced it, exposed it, made sure it couldn't hurt anyone else. He looked at her seriously. But I also learned something important, that understanding evil doesn't mean becoming evil, that you can fight darkness without losing yourself to it. Did you lose yourself? It was the question he'd been asking himself for months. Almost, Milo admitted. But not quite. The difference is that I remembered why I was fighting, not for revenge, but for justice. Not to destroy my enemies, but to protect their victims. It wasn't entirely true. Revenge had been part of his motivation. But it wasn't all of his motivation. And that distinction mattered. That evening, Milo sat in his newly purchased apartment, smaller than the brownstone he'd shared with Joanna, but his. Truly his, purchased with money he'd earned honestly, free of manipulation and lies. His phone buzzed. A text from Arthur Todd. Dinner tomorrow? Haven't seen you in ages. Arthur, who'd been peripherally involved in the case, who'd provided an alibi that first night, who'd stood by him throughout the investigation. Real friendship, proven through crisis. Sounds good, Milo replied. 7 p.m. Another text, this one from Richmond. Thought you'd want to know, Maria Castellanos graduated from community college today. She's doing well. Wanted me to thank you. Milo felt something loosen in his chest. Maria, the woman he'd seen that first night at the warehouse, terrified and trapped, was free, was building a life. That mattered. More than his anger, more than his need for revenge, that mattered. He typed back, tell her she's welcome, and that I hope she finds happiness. As evening fell, Milo poured himself a drink, scotch, expensive, like what Madden had served. But this time, it tasted different. Not like victory or revenge, but like closure. He thought about Joanna in prison, about Madden spending the rest of his life in a cell, about all the others who'd paid for their crimes. He felt no satisfaction in their suffering, just a quiet sense of rightness. Justice had been served. But more than that, he'd survived. Not just physically, but mentally. He'd walked into darkness and come out the other side. Different. Changed. But not broken. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Milo opened it to find Julie Watson, the barista who'd started everything with that message on a coffee cup. Professor Vincent? I hope it's okay that I came by. Agent Richmond gave me your address. Said you might want to talk. Julie. Of course. Come in. She sat nervously on his couch. I just wanted to say thank you for what you did, for helping bring them down. I was so scared when they recruited me, and when I finally found the courage to talk to the FBI, I thought I'd end up dead. You were incredibly brave, Milo said. Writing that message took courage. So did what you did. Going undercover, pretending to be one of them. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, but it was necessary. Are you okay? I mean, really okay? Julie's eyes were concerned. That kind of deception, that level of manipulation, it changes you, doesn't it? Milo considered the question honestly. Yes, it changes you. But change isn't always bad. I understand things now that I didn't before. About human nature, about the masks we wear, about the price of trust. Do you regret it? Any of it? I regret that it was necessary. But I don't regret doing it. Milo smiled slightly. The people they hurt, they got justice. That's worth something. Julie nodded, stood to leave. At the door, she paused. I'm opening my own coffee shop. Small place, honest business. If you're ever in the neighborhood, your coffee's on the house. Forever. After she left, Milo returned to the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, people were suffering. Being manipulated, betrayed, exploited by predators like the Mercy Collective. He couldn't save them all, but he'd saved some. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. His phone buzzed again. This time, an email from the university. Professor Vincent, we'd like to discuss expanding your role. Your insights into criminal psychology have attracted significant attention. Would you be interested in heading a new research initiative? Milo smiled. Not the cynical smile he'd worn during his time undercover, but something genuine. He'd taken his worst experience, the betrayal that had shattered his world, and turned it into something meaningful. Expertise that could help others, knowledge that could protect future victims, understanding that came from hard-won experience. That was his victory. Not revenge, though revenge had been part of it. Not destruction, though he'd destroyed his enemies. But transformation. Taking the worst thing that had ever happened to him and using it to become something stronger, wiser, better. He typed his response. I'm very interested. Let's discuss details next week. Then Milo Vincent, behavioral psychologist, survivor, and the man who'd brought down the Mercy Collective, poured the rest of his scotch down the sink. He didn't need it anymore. He didn't need anything except the knowledge that he'd faced the worst humanity could offer and hadn't broken, hadn't lost himself, hadn't become the monster he'd fought. Outside his window, the city moved on. Millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of people wearing masks and hiding secrets. Milo would be ready for them, not with cynicism or paranoia, but with wisdom, with understanding, with the hard-earned knowledge that trust was possible, but verification was necessary. And if another predator crossed his path, if another monster thought they could manipulate or exploit or destroy innocent people, well, Milo Vincent had learned a valuable lesson over the past 6 months. He knew how to fight monsters now, and he knew how to win. The end. Epilogue. 1 year later. The conference room at Westbrook University was packed. Milo stood at the podium, looking out at faces from law enforcement, psychology departments, victim advocacy groups. The psychology of long-term deception, he began, is not just an academic topic. It's a survival skill. Understanding how manipulators work, how they identify targets, build trust, exploit vulnerabilities, can save lives. He clicked to the next slide, showing statistics on victims of long-term manipulation and fraud. I speak from experience, he continued. I was married for 6 years to someone who was surveilling me the entire time. Someone who planned to kill me when I was no longer useful. And I never suspected. Not once. The room was silent, attentive. But I learned. And what I learned, I'm sharing with you now. Because the best revenge against predators isn't anger or hatred. It's making sure they can never victimize anyone again. As he lectured, Milo felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. This was his purpose now. Not just teaching students, but teaching everyone who'd listen. Creating a world where people like Joanna Spencer and Roderick Madden would find fewer victims, face more resistance, pay higher prices. After the presentation, Agent Richmond approached him. Still not interested in consulting for the Bureau? Milo smiled. Ask me again in a few years. For now, I'm exactly where I need to be. Fair enough. Richmond handed him a folder. This is for you. Inside was a letter from the 17 women they'd rescued from the Mercy Collective. Each had signed it, thanking him for his role in their liberation. You gave us our lives back. One had written, "Thank you for being brave enough to fight for us." Milo felt his eyes sting slightly. This was why he'd done it. Not for revenge, though revenge had been sweet. Not for justice, though justice had been served. But for them. For the victims. For the lives saved and the futures reclaimed. That evening, Milo sat in Sterling Coffee House, Julie's new place, and enjoyed a perfect cup of dark roast. No numbers written on the cup this time. No FBI warnings. No messages that would change his life forever. Just coffee. Just a normal evening. Just a man who'd been to hell and back and come out stronger. As he left, Julie called out, "See you tomorrow, Professor?" Milo smiled. Same time, same order. Predictable as always, she teased. Yeah, Milo agreed. Predictable. But as he walked home through the city streets, he knew the truth. He wasn't the same man who'd walked these streets a year ago. He'd been broken, rebuilt, transformed. The old Milo Vincent, naive, idealistic, trusting, was gone. In his place was someone wiser, stronger, more aware of the darkness that lurked beneath society's surface. But also someone who still believed in justice, who still fought for victims, who still chose light over darkness, even after seeing how deep that darkness could go. That was his victory. Not revenge, not destruction, but choice. He'd been given every reason to become bitter, cynical, broken. Instead, he'd chosen to become better. And as Milo Vincent walked home that evening, under stars that shone bright above the city, he knew with absolute certainty. He'd won, not just against Joanna, or Madden, or the Mercy Collective, but against the darkness they'd tried to plant inside him. He'd won by remaining human, flawed but fundamentally good, in a world that had given him every reason not to be. And that, in the end, was the only victory that mattered. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.